Look with me at Romans chapter 2, verse 25. Romans chapter 2, verse 25. For circumcision verily profiteth, if thou keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. So is there a profit to circumcision? The answer to that is yes, but it is only the case if you keep the law. Look with me at Genesis 17, verse 10. Genesis 17, verse 10. In Genesis 17, the Lord is speaking with Abraham, and He gives him the covenant of circumcision. So let's read this. Genesis 17, verse 10. This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised. So obviously there's a covenant here that God is making with Abram, and it pertains to circumcision. Now notice verse 13. He that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with thy money, must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. So was there a benefit to circumcision? There was, because if you refuse circumcision, what have you done? You've broken the covenant and you're cut off from God's people. So was it necessary? Was it appropriate for people to keep the covenant of circumcision? Yes. But was it sufficient by itself? If you got circumcised under the Old Testament law, did God say, that's great, that's all I expect. As long as you're circumcised, doesn't matter to me how you live, doesn't matter if you keep the Old Testament law, as long as you're circumcised, I'm happy. That's not the way that God thought about things. Look with me at Jeremiah chapter 9 and verse 25. Jeremiah chapter 9 and verse 25. Jeremiah chapter 9 and verse 25. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will punish all them which are circumcised with the uncircumcised. So God's going to punish the circumcised and the uncircumcised the exact same way. Why is He going to do that? Verse 26. Egypt and Judah and Edom and the children of Ammon and Moab and all that are in the utmost corners that dwell in the wilderness. For all these nations are uncircumcised. Well, if those nations are uncircumcised, then what covenant have they broken according to Genesis 17? They've broken the covenant of circumcision, right? So that's what happens to the nations, but then read the next part of the verse. And all the house of Israel are what? Uncircumcised in the heart. So the Gentile nations hadn't kept the covenant of circumcision, therefore they'd broken it. Israel had kept the covenant of circumcision in the sense that they had performed the physical act, but verse 26, what had they not done? They weren't circumcised in heart. And since they weren't circumcised in heart, how was God going to treat them in verse 25? He was going to punish the circumcised the same as the uncircumcised, because it wasn't enough simply to have the physical ceremony performed. You needed to be circumcised in heart. And if you weren't circumcised in heart, it was just as if you were uncircumcised.